Oil is the lifeblood of the Russian state. For decades, it has fueled the nation's economy and its government's ambitions. The Kremlin relies heavily on the revenue generated from selling vast quantities of crude oil and refined petroleum products on the global market. This income is not just for domestic spending or infrastructure projects. It is the primary financial engine that powers Russia's military apparatus. Without a steady flow of petrodollars, the ability to manufacture tanks, missiles, ammunition, and to pay the soldiers who operate them would be severely diminished. This fundamental economic reality places Russia's energy sector at the center of its capacity to wage a prolonged war. The invasion of Ukraine demonstrated this dependency in stark terms. As the conflict escalated, so did the costs. Russia needed more money than ever to sustain its military operations on the front lines. While international sanctions targeted many sectors of the Russian economy, oil sales remained a stubborn and resilient source of funds. Vladimir Putin's regime has proven adept at finding ways around initial restrictions, rerouting shipments, seeking new buyers. This has forced Western nations to devise more creative and stringent measures. Australia, a nation geographically distant from the conflict, has now stepped forward with a significant new set of measures. These actions, announced on September 18, 2025, represent a deliberate and calculated effort to tighten the financial screws on Moscow and weaken its war-making potential without firing a single shot. The cornerstone of Australia's new policy is a significant reduction in the price cap on Russian oil. A price cap is a maximum price that participating countries agree to pay for a product. It restricts companies within these countries, such as shipping firms and insurers, from providing services for oil sold above that price. The original cap was set at $60 per barrel. Australia's new measure lowers the ceiling to $47.60 per barrel. That's a reduction of $12.40 per barrel. The financial impact is enormous when scaled up. In July 2025, Russia exported approximately 7.3 million barrels per day, oil and petroleum products. Under the old $60 cap daily revenue, $438 million. With the new $47.60 cap daily revenue, $347 million. A potential daily loss of more than $90 million. Multiply that over a year. 7.3 million barrels per day equals over 2.6 billion barrels annually. At $60, $160 billion a year. At $47.60, $127 billion a year. A drop of around $33 billion annually. Australia is not acting alone. This is a coordinated, united front against Russian aggression. Penny Wong confirmed action alongside partners: European Union, United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Japan. Alongside the price cap, Australia has implemented a second equally important measure, targeting Russia's shadow fleet. This term refers to a large and growing collection of oil tankers that operate outside standard maritime law and industry practices. These vessels are often old, poorly maintained, obscurely owned through shell companies. Their primary purpose is to transport Russian oil in defiance of international sanctions and price caps. They use deceptive techniques to hide their activities, hide their cargo's origin, and hide their ultimate destination. These moves create a clandestine shipping network designed to keep Russia's oil money flowing despite Western restrictions. The tactics are deliberately evasive. Captains frequently turn off their automatic identification system transponders, devices that broadcast a ship's identity position and course to trackers. Going dark makes it nearly impossible to monitor them by conventional means. These ships also perform ship-to-ship transfers on the high seas, moving oil between tankers to obscure its Russian origin before the final port. They often sail under flags of convenience to avoid scrutiny. Australia announced targeted sanctions on an additional 95 vessels identified as part of the shadow fleet. Sanctions against physical ships may seem abstract, but their power lies in disrupting the ecosystem of services that underpins global maritime trade. Insurance is perhaps the most critical of these services. International shipping runs on risk management. Marine insurance is essential. Without proper insurance, a ship cannot legally enter most major ports. It cannot navigate critical waterways like the Suez Canal, nor can it secure financing for its voyage. Most of the top marine insurers are based in the United Kingdom and the European Union. Both are part of the price cap coalition, giving them immense leverage. The new sanctions bar these insurers from covering any vessel transporting Russian oil above $47.60. This applies regardless of a ship's flag or ownership. Sanctions on shadow fleet vessels force insurers to drop coverage entirely. Insurers now require ships to keep AIS transponders active at all times. If a ship goes dark or uses deceptive practices, its insurance can be voided immediately. Operators face a choice: comply and reveal their movements, or operate without credible insurance. Operating uninsured is incredibly risky. An uninsured tanker risks being seized, being denied port entry, or being held liable for massive costs after an accident, like an oil spill. Australia's actions against Russia's oil trade are part of a much wider and more comprehensive sanctions regime. The economic pressure is not limited to a single commodity, but extends across various sectors of the Russian economy and targets specific individuals responsible for the war and internal repression. Just a few weeks before the oil-related announcements, the Australian government imposed another round of targeted financial sanctions and travel bans. This set of sanctions focused on 14 Russian individuals identified as complicit in severe human rights abuses and suppression of political freedoms. These sanctions target those cracking down on anti-war advocates and silencing dissent against Putin's regime. In her statement, Foreign Minister Penny Wong highlighted the deteriorating human rights situation in Russia, where violent crackdowns suppress free expression. By imposing travel bans, Australia and its partners confine these individuals to Russia and a handful of allied nations, cutting them off from the international community. Financial sanctions freeze their assets held abroad and bar access to the global financial system, applying personal costs for their roles in enabling the war and abuses at home. The total number of Australian sanctions against Russian and Belarusian entities and individuals has now surpassed 1,600. The large and growing list creates a complex web of restrictions to isolate Russia politically and economically. The cumulative effect is meant to weaken the regime's foundation. The robust new measures from Australia and its allies were met with immediate praise from Ukraine. Andriy Sybiha publicly expressed his gratitude to the Australian government. He said lowering the oil price cap and sanctioning the shadow fleet helps restrict Russia's ability to finance its aggression and undermine global peace. For Ukraine, every dollar denied to the Kremlin is a victory. This support is not only financially significant, but also a crucial morale booster, showing they are not alone against a much larger aggressor. The collective nature of these sanctions serves a strategic defensive purpose. By acting as part of a large coalition that includes the EU and other G7 nations, the risk is distributed. It is far more difficult for Russia to punish a united front of powerful economies. But these Western policies have had unintended consequences in global trade. One notable side effect is the leverage given to remaining buyers of Russian oil, chief among them China and India. These buyers are outside the price cap coalition and keep purchasing large volumes of Russian crude. With Russia desperate to sell, they hold a powerful negotiating position. They can demand steep discounts and pay prices well below global market rates, even if sometimes above the Western cap. This dynamic has made China the single biggest winner from the sanctions on Russian oil. It is estimated that between March 2022 and June 2024, Beijing saved over $16 billion on Russian oil imports compared to market prices. In summary, Australia's new measures represent a significant escalation in the economic campaign to curtail Russia's war-making capabilities. The strategy is clear and two-pronged. First, price cap, set to $47.60 per barrel, in concert with allies. Aim: reduce revenue from Russia's most critical export. Simple arithmetic shows this could slash Russia's potential income by tens of billions of dollars annually. Second, sanctions on 95 additional shadow fleet vessels. The aim is to dismantle the clandestine network of tankers used to transport oil illicitly by making it illegal for coalition country firms to provide insurance and other essential services to these ships. The sanctions dramatically increase the risk and cost of their operations. The goal is to force these ships out of the water or into compliance, making the price cap harder to circumvent and tightening the net around Russia's illicit trade. These actions do not exist in a vacuum. They are part of a broader, sustained effort by a coalition of nations to impose real costs on Russia for its aggression. The strategy is one of persistent attrition. It may not end the war overnight, but by systematically degrading Russia's financial foundation, Australia and its partners hope to make the cost of continuing the conflict unbearably high, forcing a change in the Kremlin's calculations over time.